Tonight, you and I are looking out at Saturn, a giant nearly 900 million miles from our Sun. Those magnificent rings have haunted us for over 400 years, appearing perfectly serene through our long-range telescopes. But radiation and the cold math of rocket propulsion build walls unlike anything else we face in this solar system. By the end of tonight, you will see why anyone flying there faces challenges that are fundamentally unforgiving. Before we push deeper into the void, if you love exploring space, please like the video or subscribe. It is a small thing, but it helps us reach more curious minds. Now, let us begin our journey. Saturn looks so peaceful from a distance, with those elegant rings circling a silent, pale gold body. It is a monster, the second largest planet, massive enough to swallow 764 Earth's whole. When we look at Cassini's shots of those ring structures and that haunting hexagonal storm at the North Pole, it feels like a world waiting for us. But that impression is dangerously misleading. Saturn is incredibly hostile, but not in obvious ways like the crushing pressure we see on Venus. Its dangers are subtle and insidious. They do not announce themselves until it is far too late. They stack up, layer by layer, until they form an insurmountable barrier for any human explorer. We are talking 886 million miles from the Sun, roughly 1.43 billion kilometers away. That is 10 times farther than our home. If Earth's orbit were a quarter, Saturn's would be 8 feet wide. The scale is hard to grasp. Even at our top speeds, the journey takes years of total solitude. Cassini, our most successful probe, left in October 1997 and didn't arrive until July 2004. 7 years in the black void, and that was just a machine. No humans were on board. It didn't need shielding for living skin, or the massive life support systems needed for a 7-year mission. For a crew, my ship would have to be massive, complex, and incredibly expensive to build. Every extra kilogram means more fuel to push away from Earth, and more to slow down later. The rocket equation from 1897 is the ghost that haunts every pilot. It is brutally unforgiving. It says, our velocity depends on the logarithm of our mass ratio. The math never lies up here. Basically, if I add payload, the fuel I need doesn't just grow, it explodes exponentially. Doubling my gear more than doubles the fuel. It is a weight trap that is hard to escape. That is why design is so hard. We cannot just go bigger because the math fights us. Packing enough for a 7-year trip makes my ship almost impossible to get off the ground. I would need 20 separate launches just to piece the ship together right here in orbit. Building a vessel in orbit is expensive, messy, and carries a terrifying amount of risk. Every docking and every bolt is a potential failure point, waiting to end the mission. My current home, the station, took 40 missions and a decade to build, and it is tiny. It lacks the engines or shielding I would need once I leave Earth's magnetic protection. There are no tanks or engines. Making a ship for Saturn is a gargantuan, daunting task. Then there is radiation, the silent killer that most people do not even consider out here. Back home, the magnetic field is a bubble that deflects the worst cosmic radiation away from you. This shield reaches thousands of miles out. It is the only reason life even exists down there. Without it, the surface would burn. Once I leave this bubble, I am completely exposed. High-energy cosmic rays, mostly protons, are constantly slamming through my hull as I watch. These come from dying stars and black holes. They are the ghosts of violent celestial events. They travel at nearly light speed. When they hit my ship, they punch through the walls like paper. They shatter atoms in the walls, creating a cascade of debris that passes right through me. They tear through my cells, shredding DNA. And then there are the solar flares. Our sun periodically erupts, spitting billions of tons of fire into the void at millions of miles per hour. These ejections can kill me in hours if I am caught without heavy shielding in the deep. You see those beautiful auroras at the poles? Those lights signal that our shield is holding back a deadly fire. Out here in deep space, there is no shield. If a solar flare hits while I am heading for Saturn, I have to find cover fast. My ship needs a dedicated radiation shelter, a thick, armored room where my crew and I can hide from those solar particles. That vault needs enough supplies for several days, since major flares can linger. It needs its own life support too. We have to stay sane in that tiny, cramped box for days. But every pound adds mass, and mass is my enemy out here. Armor helps, but perfection is impossible. I cannot block everything without making my ship way too heavy to move. The aluminum and composites in my hull offer some safety, but honestly, they are not ideal. When high-energy particles slam into my aluminum hull, they create secondary radiation. We call it spallation. Those particles shatter the aluminum atoms, creating radioactive showers worse than the original blast. I need hydrogen-rich materials instead. Hydrogen atoms are great at scattering radiation. They are just the right size to knock those incoming particles off course. We have considered lining our quarters with water tanks, using my own life source as a radiation shield. It does double duty, protecting us while providing the water I need for drinking, cooking, and cleaning. Even with the best gear, I cannot hide completely. Something always leaks through the walls. During my 7-year haul to Saturn, my crew and I soak up massive radiation. We measure it in sieverts. One chest X-ray is only 0.01 millisieverts. A CT scan is about 10. Back home, you probably get 2 or 3 millisieverts a year just from natural background radiation. Up on the station, I would take nearly 1 millisievert every day. That adds up to over 150 for a short 6-month mission. That is way higher than Earth levels, but we still consider it acceptable for spaceflight. My NASA career limit is usually around 1 to 4 sieverts total. That is meant to keep my personal cancer risk under 3%. For a multi-year deep space trek, my exposure will be higher than anything humans have ever faced. Mars estimates suggest I might take between 0.3 and 1 full sievert just for the round trip. But a Saturn mission is much longer. I am looking at 2 to 4 sieverts, maybe even more. This sky rockets my cancer risk. It shreds my organs, fogs my brain, and destroys my immune system. It is not just cancer. High doses give me acute radiation sickness. Smaller doses just rot me slowly. These particles age my cells instantly. I will get cataracts, and eventually, I will not even be able to think straight. We have studied bomb survivors and cancer patients. Even moderate doses like mine have measurable, terrifying effects. By the time I finally reach Saturn, my crew is already falling apart. We are already battling years of radiation damage, and that is before we even talk about microgravity. Microgravity, that constant state of freefall I live in, is a nightmare for a long-haul flight. The term microgravity is misleading. You and I need to understand it does not mean there is no gravity. On the space station, I still feel 90% of the gravity you feel on the ground. But the station and I are in a permanent freefall around Earth. We are falling, but moving forward so fast that we just keep missing the planet. That is how I feel weightless. In the total absence of gravity pulling on me, my entire physiology begins to warp. My bones lose density because they are not carrying any weight. They stop getting the signal to grow. My body decides strong bones are a waste of resources. It starts breaking them down faster than I can build them. Up here, I lose between 1 and 2% of my bone mass every single month, especially in my legs. 7 years of this would be catastrophic. I would arrive at Saturn with bones that are already as fragile as glass. My muscles atrophy for the same reason. Since I do not fight gravity, they just waste away. It is not just my arms and legs failing. My heart is a muscle too, and it weakens in weightlessness. Back home, my heart works hard to pump blood against gravity. Out here, that is not necessary anymore. My heart does not work as hard, so it shrinks and weakens. My blood volume drops because my body just gives up on it. When I return to Earth after 6 months, I will feel dizzy and weak. My heart just is not ready. I might not even be able to stand. After 7 years, you and I both know that damage would be irreversible. I have to exercise for hours every day just to slow the rot. I use machines that simulate lifting weights. I run on treadmills with heavy bungee harnesses pulling me down. I pedal a stationary bike until I am exhausted. Even with all that work, I still lose bone and muscle. My heart still changes. There is no escaping it. Some changes reverse after landing, but others haunt me forever. My bone density might never fully recover. That is after only 1 year. For our multi-year journey to Saturn, the effects would be devastating, possibly beyond any hope of repair. We would reach Saturn as ghosts of ourselves, fragile bones, wasted muscles, and hearts struggling just to pump blood. Simple tasks we used to master would become grueling. Climbing a ladder, lifting gear, or even just trying to walk. Landing on a moon with heavy gravity would be a nightmare. And that assumes the mental strain does not break us first. Imagine 7 years trapped in this tiny tin can with the same few faces. No privacy, no escape from the confinement. I cannot just step outside for fresh air or feel the sun on my skin. Every single day feels like the last. The same cold walls, the same people, and that stale, recycled air smelling of chemicals. Earth feels further away with every breath. Knowing any small emergency would be our end because help is impossible. The mental weight of that is just staggering. We have studied isolation in Antarctica, in subs, and on the space station, but those places are nothing like this void. A mission to Saturn is far more extreme. In Antarctica, the researchers get to leave after a year and go home. Submariners deploy for months, not years. On the International Space Station, we are only minutes away from home by radio. Out here near Saturn, we are truly alone, cut off from humanity. The communication delays grow longer the further we drift. Our radio signals move at the speed of light. That sounds fast, and back on Earth, it really is. But the distances in the solar system are so massive that even light struggles to cross the great dark emptiness. At this distance, light takes 71 to 84 minutes just to travel one way, depending on where we are. When Earth and Saturn align on the same side of the Sun, our signals still take 71 minutes to arrive. When they are on opposite sides, signals take 84 minutes. That means a round trip between 2.4 and 2.8 hours. I cannot have a real conversation with mission control. I cannot just call my family to hear their voices in real time. Every word is delayed, like sending letters through the mail. Imagine trying to fix a life-threatening problem with this lag. Suppose our oxygen system fails. Carbon dioxide starts climbing. We need an answer now, but the void does not care. I send a frantic message to mission control, explaining everything. Then we wait. 80 minutes pass before they even hear us. The ground team scrambles to find a fix, digging through manuals. That takes another hour, or even more, while we suffocate. They beam their response back. Another 80 minutes vanish while the signal travels. By the time I hear their advice, 3 hours have passed. If it does not work, we start the cycle all over again. A fix that should take 30 minutes back home ends up consuming an entire day out here in the black. In a critical emergency where seconds count, help from Earth is basically useless. We are staring into the abyss alone. We are on our own. We have to survive using only the knowledge and tools we carried with us. The isolation is crushing. I can send a video to my family, but their faces will not answer for hours. I would watch my kids grow up in grainy clips, missing their birthdays before the files even reach my terminal. I would hear about deaths or emergencies days after they happened. The distance between me and Earth grows wider every month. My reality starts to shift. News from Earth, like politics or stories, begins to feel like fiction from a distant world. We live in a tiny bubble of metal flying through nothingness. Earth is becoming more of a memory than a place. The sense of isolation only deepens as we approach Saturn because the planets keep moving away. The gap between Earth and our ship is always changing throughout the mission. At the halfway point, our messages might take 90 minutes or more just to make the trip. By the time we reach Saturn, if Earth is on the far side of the Sun, we are truly gone. We are functionally alone, cut off from the human race in a way that you cannot understand until you are here. Every astronaut feels a deep chill when they look back and see Earth as just a tiny, fragile blue marble. For us at Saturn, Earth eventually fades into just another bright star. It looks like all the others, except we know which one it is. The psychological weight of that is immense. We are social creatures. We evolved to be in groups, talking and seeing hundreds of people every day. Even if I am an introvert who loves quiet, I still need a human connection to stay sane. A crew of 6 locked in this ship for 7 years is pushing the absolute limit of human endurance. We know conflicts will start. Small habits become major irritations, and personality quirks turn into something I just cannot stand. From up here, it looks like a routine day at the market. I froze against the glass, unable to believe what was unfolding right below me. That massive empire had been bleeding out for years. Now, they're finally facing total bankruptcy. No one saw it coming. Are you sure this is the right way to go? Word reached the station. Elon Musk's new Tesla plant hits Berlin next year. I watched her enter the darkness. Even from orbit, I felt her heart race. This mystery has haunted us out here for 20 years. We need private corners on this ship just to keep our sanity. Somewhere for entertainment and recreation. Maybe VR could simulate a walk in the woods. But we definitely need flawless communication systems. That's the only way we could stay connected with our families back on Earth despite the delay. But every luxury adds mass, more hardware, and 1,000 new ways for things to break. Imagine we solve it all. We actually build life support that can keep us breathing for years. Systems that recycle our water and air with perfect efficiency, and shielding against the killing radiation. This lead and water would keep the rays away. Then, we add artificial gravity to the mix. Maybe our ship rotates, using centrifugal force to stop our bones and muscles from wasting away. Or perhaps we're pumped full of experimental drugs and therapies to fight off the effects of microgravity. Assume we perfect the psych evaluations to ensure none of us snap during the multi-year journey. We develop nuclear or fusion drives to speed things up, shaving years off our time in the void. The trip drops from 7 years to 3. Finally, we reach our destination. We reach Saturn. My crew arrives healthy, stable, and ready to work. But here's the catch. Now what? We're stuck. We can't go home because Saturn itself makes it nearly impossible to ever leave. Let me show you what we're facing. Saturn is a gas giant, the second largest in our neighborhood. Our target has a diameter of roughly 74,898 miles. It is absolutely gargantuan. That's over 9.4 times wider than Earth, with 95 times more mass than our home world. Yet even with that weight, it's less dense than water. In a big enough tub, it floats. This low density reveals the truth. Saturn is made mostly of hydrogen and helium gas. It's the same stuff found in the Sun. In a way, Saturn is just a failed star. If it were 80 times heavier, its core would have ignited with nuclear fusion long ago. But it missed that mark. So instead of a sun, it's a giant ball with no surface. That's hard to wrap your head around. On Earth or Mars, you have solid ground to stand on. Not here. If I tried to land on Saturn, I wouldn't find any soil or rock. There's no floor. I just keep sinking deeper into a hot, thick soup of gas. The atmosphere would swallow us, turning from a thin haze to a suffocating, blinding fog. Eventually, the pressure would crush our hull like a soda can before we saw anything solid. Tens of thousands of miles down, it's so hot that the hydrogen actually turns into a liquid state. Even deeper, the pressure hits millions of times what we feel at sea level on Earth. Down there, hydrogen turns into something alien. We call it metallic hydrogen. The pressure is so intense that electrons break free, making the whole layer electrically conductive. This bizarre metallic sea is what generates Saturn's massive and powerful magnetic field. Electric currents flow through this liquid metal, creating a planetary dynamo on a terrifying scale. No ship could ever survive reaching that layer. At the very center, there is a core. It's likely a dense ball of rock and metal, surrounded by exotic, high-pressure ice. This core might be 10 to 20 times the mass of Earth, but we can't see it. Temperatures there reach 25,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It is literally hotter than the surface of the Sun. I look down at Saturn's core, where it's scorching. Pressure there is tens of millions of times greater than what we feel back on Earth at sea level. In these extremes, matter acts in ways we simply cannot replicate. It is a reality that defies our best laboratory simulations. Soft materials turn into armor-grade solids under that weight. Strange chemical reactions that are impossible at home suddenly become the norm. It is a scientific marvel, but it also means our toughest ships would be crushed instantly by those physics. No alloy or clever engineering can survive tens of millions of atmospheres. The heat and pressure would simply unmake anything we send down. The forces are just too vast for us. We cannot land on Saturn because there is literally no solid ground to touch. If I tried to descend, the heat and pressure would tear my ship apart within an hour, maybe even seconds. Back in December 1995, the Galileo probe lasted only 58 minutes before Jupiter claimed it. It sent back data from crushing depths where the pressure was 24 times Earth's and temperatures hit a blistering 330 degrees Fahrenheit. That is 166 degrees Celsius. Then it was crushed and vaporized. Saturn is slightly calmer, but the threat remains lethal. The math stays the same. Any descent is a one-way trip. We send probes for a few hours of data before they die. But I cannot go down there and expect to come back. And then there is the other nightmare we face, the rings. Saturn's rings are arguably the most beautiful sight you and I could ever witness. They are also a deadly obstacle course for any pilot. You might think they are solid, but they are actually billions of loose fragments, ranging from tiny dust grains to massive frozen mountains. Most of it is pure water ice, which makes them shine so brightly. But there are jagged, rocky silicate particles hiding in there too. This massive disk stretches over 175,000 miles, yet it is often only 30 feet thick in most places. It is an incredibly flat structure. If we scaled them down to the size of a football field, they would be thinner than a single sheet of paper. Gravity keeps them this way. The moons and the particles themselves dance in a delicate, flat, orbital ballet. They bump together softly, settling into the thinnest layer possible, much like silt on a riverbed. But for a pilot like me, this makes the rings a dangerously crowded place to navigate. Everything orbits at different speeds based on distance. Those particles on the inside are moving like absolute speed demons compared to the rest. Outer bits move slower. The speed difference between these layers can reach thousands of miles per hour. If I fly through that plane, I am risking a collision with debris moving at lethal velocities relative to my ship. Even a tiny speck hitting us at those speeds would be an absolute catastrophe. Imagine an ice pebble hitting my hull at 10,000 miles per hour. It carries enough energy to punch through metal like a bullet through paper. It would shatter our viewports, vent our air, and kill our critical systems in a heartbeat. The Cassini mission spent years avoiding the thickest parts of the rings, crossing the orbital plane only when the science absolutely required it. Only near the very end did Cassini take the plunge, threading the needle between the upper atmosphere and the dangerous inner edge of the rings. During that legendary grand finale, it dove through a gap you and I can barely imagine, a place no human-made object had ever gone before. When you consider Saturn is 75,000 miles wide, that gap is barely 2% of its diameter. Navigating that space required extreme precision. We had to thread a tiny needle between the clouds and the ice. Even there, we ran into far more dust than anyone on the ground had predicted. Tiny ring particles drifting inward created a faint, gritty, and dusty environment even in that narrow gap. Our sensors felt every impact, nudging the ship off course. For us, astronauts, trying to navigate these rings represents a truly terrifying challenge. I cannot just fly into Saturn from any angle. My route must avoid the densest debris to keep us safe. This dictates our entire mission. Launch windows are tight, depending heavily on where the planet is and what approach angles are available to us. It even limits which moons we can visit, since many require us to dodge the rings repeatedly. If a thruster fails, or I make a navigation error into those rings, it is game over for the crew. Those rings are alive with electricity. Saturn's magnetic field charges the particles, creating a chaotic and unpredictable environment for us. We see mysterious spoke-like shapes in the B ring that seem to ghost in and out of existence. Electromagnetic forces might be levitating dust into these eerie spokes. Voyager saw them first, and later Cassini caught them on camera as well. From out here, we still haven't truly figured out what makes them form. Flying through those zones could fry my comms. I might lose contact with Earth in an instant. Our instruments might give false readings. A sudden electrical discharge could burn out our most vital electronics. We can plan for these risks, but they make an already grueling mission feel nearly impossible. These rings are a source of pure navigation uncertainty. Out here near Saturn, gravity is a tricky thing. It is not just the planet pulling on my ship, it is the massive rings too. There is so much mass locked in those rings. Imagine one of Saturn's medium moons ground down and spread across that massive disk. All that mass creates tugs that throw my trajectory off. Navigating close to the gas giant means accounting for every tiny pull. My flight math gets a lot more complicated. You and I both know position and speed become harder to pin down when fighting a shifting gravitational field. I can handle it usually. Cassini survived here for 13 years. But when lives are on the line, precision is everything. Every bit of uncertainty out here is terrifying. Then there is the sheer scale of it all. The main rings alone stretch out 4,300 miles above the clouds, reaching 85,000 miles. Beyond those are the faint outer rings, stretching even further into the dark. The E ring, fed by Enceladus, reaches from 112,000 miles to over 360,000 miles away. That is a massive void filled with debris. Any mission I run means spending time in this dangerous environment. I cannot avoid it. Every time I cross the ring plane, even the thin parts, I am gambling with my life. Radiation near the rings is a nightmare compared to deep space. Ring dust clashing with Saturn's magnetosphere creates a chaotic mess. The rings block some of it, casting a shadow. But other processes just end up breeding more dangerous charged particles. Cosmic rays slam into the dust, raining secondary particles on us. These interactions create plasma that accelerates everything to high speeds. The net result is that the radiation near the rings is completely unpredictable. It is not always worse, but it is far more variable. When I am planning a flight, simple models just do not cut it. Saturn's environment is far too complex. I have to account for how the rings warp the particles. That means harder math and a lot more guesswork. What about the moons? There are 83 known worlds out here, and likely dozens more hiding in the shadows. They range from tiny chunks of ice just miles across, basically captured rocks, all the way up to massive Titan. Titan is bigger than Mercury, and weirdly Earth-like, even though we are nearly 1 billion miles from the Sun. Surely I could land on one of these moons, explore, gather data, and use it as a base for my long journey back home. It sounds more realistic than touching Saturn itself. At least these moons have solid ground where I can actually land. They have gravity weak, sure, but enough to keep my boots on the ground and offer up precious resources. I could melt ice for water or split it into fuel. Beyond that, some of these moons are just scientifically incredible. Titan has a thick nitrogen atmosphere, even heavier than Earth's. The surface pressure is about 1.5 times what I would feel at sea level. I would see lakes and rivers of liquid methane out there. It has weather, clouds, and even seasons just like home. Organic chemistry is happening all over its surface. It might hold the clues to how life actually started back on Earth. Then there is Enceladus. It has massive geysers erupting from deep cracks near its south pole. These vents blast ice and organics into space. Cassini actually flew through those plumes to see what they were made of. We found evidence of a hidden ocean under the ice. It is touching the moon's rocky core, which changes everything. That means hydrothermal vents and chemical energy might exist. All the ingredients for life as I know it are right there. If life exists anywhere else in our solar system, Enceladus is my top pick. Moons like Dione and Iapetus have their own secrets, from bizarre surface markings to massive, ancient craters. But landing on these moons does not solve my biggest problem, getting home. In fact, it makes everything much harder. Let's look at the catch. Reaching Saturn takes massive amounts of energy. I have to push my ship to tens of thousands of miles per hour. 7 years is already a long time to be out here. Any slower, and I would be looking at 15 years in deep space. I do not want to spend 15 years each way, so I have to go fast. Speed requires energy, which means more fuel. When I finally arrive, I am screaming past the planet. If I do nothing, I will just vanish into the outer solar system. To orbit or land, I have to slow down. That means flipping the ship and firing my engines against my own momentum. I burn fuel just to drop my speed. We call it an orbital insertion burn, and it eats through my propellant fast. Landing on a moon takes even more. I slow down for Saturn, then slow down again to catch the moon's orbit. Then I have to slow down yet again to land. Every single maneuver drains my fuel. This is where physics gets cruel. That fuel has mass, and I have to carry it all the way from Earth. More fuel means a much bigger rocket, but a bigger rocket with more fuel has even more mass, which then requires, you guessed it, even more fuel just to move it. More mass needs more fuel to move, and that extra weight requires even more propellant. It's a cycle. The rocket equation compounds exponentially for a one-way trip like Cassini. For us, that's the easy part. I'd use my entire fuel budget for the trip out and for work at Saturn. I wouldn't need to save anything for a return trip because I'm never coming home. But for a crewed mission that needs to return, the problem is much harder. I need fuel just to reach Saturn. I need fuel for capture into orbit, for operations around the moons, and for every tiny adjustment to our path. If I land on a moon, I need to blast off again. Then I must fight to escape Saturn's gravity. Finally, I need fuel for the long trek back home. Every drop comes from Earth, or we make it there. We could live off the land, but if I'm hauling all my return fuel from Earth to the outer planets, my ship's launch mass becomes terrifying. Let's look at the rough numbers and see why this is so hard. Suppose my ship weighs 100 tons dry. That is incredibly optimistic for a crewed interplanetary vessel with all necessary systems, but let's use it. Chemical rockets have a specific impulse of 300 to 450 seconds. That specific impulse measurement tells me how efficient my engines are. It determines my total thrust through the rocket equation. To gain 10 kilometers per second in speed necessary for this mission, my ship needs a massive fuel load. I'd need 4.6 times the ship's dry weight in propellant. That's 460 tons. So, before I even fire the first engine, we weigh 560 tons, and that's just one burn. I need a burn to leave Earth, one for course corrections and another to actually park at Saturn. I need burns to leave Saturn and capture at Earth. Every maneuver requires fuel, and that future fuel has to be carried through every previous burn. All that extra mass must be accelerated. When I do the math, the numbers grow out of control. A crewed Saturn mission using chemical power would mean launching thousands of tons into the dark. Launch costs are roughly $10,000 per kilogram. Orbiting a mission this size would easily run into tens of billions of dollars. That is before you count my ship, the development costs, the operations, and the massive ground support infrastructure back on Earth. I am looking at a mission that would cost several $trillion. The space station cost $150 billion. My Saturn trip might cost 10 or 20 times that. It's a hard sell. My best bet to cut fuel weight is finding a much more efficient propulsion system. Ion drives or nuclear electric systems are 10 times more efficient than the chemical rockets I use now. They slash the propellant mass significantly. But these systems bring their own set of problems. Their thrust is pathetic. A 7-year journey might take even longer if I'm creeping along on ion power. The fuel savings are incredible, but this technology is just not mature enough for us. We've used ion drives on small probes, but never for a massive ship carrying actual human beings. Another way is living off the land, manufacturing my fuel at the destination instead of hauling it all. I could land on Enceladus or Titan, extracting water or hydrocarbons to manufacture my own fuel from those local moon materials. By using electricity to split water, I get hydrogen and oxygen. Those are the gold standard for fuel. Liquid hydrogen and oxygen, that's the same powerful cocktail that lifted the space shuttle into orbit. Titan has plenty of methane too. Mixing that with oxygen creates an effective propellant for the trip home. But the equipment needed to extract and store those materials is massive. It's never been tested at the scale my life will depend on. I'd need serious power. Probably several nuclear reactors generating megawatts of electricity just to keep things running. Out here, solar panels are useless. The sunlight at Saturn is only 1% as strong as on Earth. Massive arrays would just be targets for damage. Nuclear is the only way I'm surviving this deep. I'd need an entire factory to mine ice, pump liquids, and split water into breathable air and fuel. I'd need compressors and cryogenic tanks to keep the hydrogen and oxygen at the extremely cold temperatures required for spaceflight. This equipment must operate in Saturn's brutal radiation and temperatures that can drop to minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit or even colder. We need total redundancy, because one failure could strand me here. If the oxygen system breaks and I can't fix it, I'm not making fuel. If I can't make fuel, I can't leave. Building that infrastructure on a frozen Saturn moon is an enormous undertaking. It would take multiple cargo missions sent ahead of us just to preposition all our equipment. Robots or prep crews would have to build the systems and start producing fuel before I even arrive on site. This stretches our mission timeline by years and sends costs through the roof. Every cargo run needs a separate launch, its own fuel, and a lonely trek through the void. You and I might watch 10 cargo ships launch before we even board. Even then, there is no promise any of this actually works. We have never actually lived off the land out there. No one has ever drilled for ice on the moon or the red plains of Mars. We have never run a chemical plant on a frozen, airless rock. We have never kept cryogenic fuel stable for years in the deep cold of space. On paper, it is all possible. But out here, theory and practice are two different worlds. Lab success usually crumbles when it meets the real environment. The void is merciless. There is no room for error when our lives depend entirely on these systems holding together perfectly. Even if everything goes right, we are stuck on the surface for months, maybe years, just cooking enough fuel to get our crew home. Churning out tons of liquid hydrogen and oxygen is a slow grind. Splitting molecules for fuel is not something you can rush. We can only make fuel as fast as our power systems allow. If we are only making a few kilos a day but need tons for the journey home, we are waiting years. All that time, we are huddled on an airless, frozen moon, right in the teeth of Saturn's lethal radiation belts. We are tethered to machines that have to be perfect. There is no rescue ship coming for us out here. Our habitats must hold pressure, scrub our air, recycle our water, and shield us from the crushing cold and radiation extremes. These walls have to hold for years without a single glitch. One broken seal or power failure, and it is all over for everyone. The mental weight of being committed is heavy. Knowing we cannot leave until that fuel tank is full would be absolutely crushing. I would know that one failure means being stranded 1 billion miles from home. Every morning, I would wake up realizing Earth is just an unreachable blue speck. If things go south, we die. Our survival depends on these machines humming along and our own hands fixing them when they inevitably snap. The pressure is unreal. Some of us might hold it together, but others would just snap under the weight of the isolation and fear. And we cannot go home early. There is no escape pod. We have to endure the silence until the propellant is finally ready. Let us look closer at Saturn's radiation, one of the most serious hazards we face. Its magnetic field is 578 times stronger than Earth's. This invisible monster is born from electric currents swirling in the metallic hydrogen layer deep inside the gas giant. The field reaches way out into the dark, trapping charged particles from the solar wind and cosmic rays like a giant magnetic web. These particles ricochet between the poles, creating radiation belts that make the Van Allen belts near Earth look like a total joke. They are massive and incredibly intense. Most of that deadly energy is packed near the rings along the planet's equatorial plane. The rings and most of the big moons orbit right through the heart of that radioactive firestorm. The danger zone stretches from the cloud tops all the way out past Titan, the largest moon, that is over 750,000 miles away. That is more than 1 million kilometers from the center. Even there, levels are dangerous, though Titan's thick atmosphere gives us a little bit of protection. Any ship passing through is hammered by high-energy protons and electrons. It is like flying through a constant hail of invisible bullets. These particles pack millions of electron volts. When they slam into our hull, they start tearing the spacecraft's integrity apart. They ghost through our electronics, flipping bits in the memory and making our metals brittle. It is like the ship is aging in dog years. Trapped gases leak out, fogging up our cameras and sensors. Over time, the radiation just eats the entire mission alive. Cassini was built tough with heavy shielding and parts designed to take a beating from the subatomic storm. Even with all that armor, the damage piled up over its 13-year journey around the ringed planet. The navigators had to carefully weave Cassini through the gaps to avoid the deadliest parts of those radiation belts. We had to skip some science because getting too close would have fried the electronics and killed the mission way too early. A ship with us on board needs way more protection than a probe. My cells are much more fragile than a silicon chip. You can build a chip to survive a solar flare, but human DNA starts unraveling at much lower levels than electronics. We would need massive walls of water or plastic around our bunks to survive. That adds a staggering amount of weight to the launch. Water is incredibly heavy. 1 cubic meter weighs an entire ton. Just shielding a small module would require 100 tons of it. That is 100 tons of dead weight just to keep us alive, and even a meter of water might not be enough out there. We would have to haul all that mass from Earth or slave away to manufacture it from the alien ice below our feet. Even with shielding, some rays get through. High-energy particles hit the hull and create a secondary shower of radiation inside with us. You and I can try to hide, but we cannot truly escape it. If we stay near Saturn, the clock is always ticking. Whether we are walking on Enceladus or orbiting between the moons, our radiation dose just keeps climbing, day after day. There is no hiding. Even in a bunker, the rays get through, chewing on our tissues and spiking our long-term risk of cancer. It is not an immediate sickness. We won't feel it happening, but over months and years, that invisible damage just keeps stacking up until it is too late. Out here, DNA in my cells gets shredded constantly. My body fixes most of it, but never everything. Those broken cells can turn into cancer. Others just die off, slowly eating away at my vital organs. My long-term cancer risk is skyrocketing right now. Plus, my immune system is becoming a total ghost. Cataracts will probably cloud my eyes early. Worse, we are seeing evidence that radiation is literally eating our brains. High-energy particles zip through my skull, damaging neurons. It hits my memory and how I make decisions. These changes are subtle and mysterious, but for a long haul like this, they are terrifying. We have to nail complex tasks while radiation is actively rotting our ability to think straight. One mistake out here is lethal. That is why Titan is so tempting that thick air offers natural shielding. The air here is roughly 1.5 times thicker than what you breathe at sea level back on Earth. It is composed mostly of nitrogen, about 98%, mixed with a bit of methane and traces of other gases. That heavy soup of air soaks up those deadly particles screaming off Saturn radiation belts. Down on the surface, I am exposed to far less radiation than if I were orbiting Saturn or standing on dead moons. Titan is easily the safest spot in the Saturn system, but do not let that fool you. It remains a brutal place to live. Surface temps hit minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a bone-chilling and impossible cold. It is so cold that water ice is basically rock. Hit it with a hammer and it shatters like granite. Forget water. Those rivers and lakes you see in the photos are actually liquid methane and ethane. They are freezing pools of hydrocarbons and nitrogen, swirling in a dark, oily mix. This stuff literally rains from the sky, carves out valleys, and floods into massive alien seas. Titan has a cycle just like Earth, but instead of life-giving water, it is fueled by methane. Methane rain falls, pools on the ground, then vanishes back into the sky to start all over again. Working here means every piece of gear must survive minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit. Tough metals turn brittle as glass out here. Try bending a steel beam in this cold, and it will just snap. Plastics shatter. Rubber seals turn hard as stone, and then the leaks start. That is how you die. Grease freezes solid, seizing every gear. Even the electronics start acting weird in this deep freeze. Some parts actually run better cold, but most just die. Batteries lose their charge almost instantly. Screens go black. Semiconductors warp. We have to build every single part to survive this nightmare. Every bolt in our ship and habitat has been tested to hell and back for this environment. You cannot just bring Earth gear here and expect it to hold up. It will fail in seconds. That atmosphere protects us from rays, but it is a chemical beast that brings its own problems. Harsh ultraviolet light from the sun is constantly ripping methane apart high in the sky. Those pieces stitch back together into thick organic soups, ethane, propane, and even toxic benzene. We call these sticky molecules tholins. Carl Sagan actually came up with that name years ago. Tholins are the orange haze choking Titan's sky. They are fascinating to scientists, but a nightmare for me. They look a lot like the building blocks that started life on Earth billions of years ago. You and I might finally understand how life itself actually began by studying this orange gunk. From where I stand, tholins are just trouble. They rain down like organic smog, coating every single thing I touch. My windows and solar panels get covered in this grime, slowly choking off the light we need. Moving parts get gummed up. Our habitat filters constantly clog with that sticky orange dust. I am constantly scrubbing surfaces and swapping filters just to keep the systems from choking out. One tiny tear in my suit, and the atmosphere rushes in. I cannot breathe that stuff. It is almost entirely nitrogen. I would suffocate in minutes, though the cold would probably finish me off even faster. At these temps, my skin would freeze instantly. If I tried to inhale, my lungs would just shatter. Even with the best gear, every second out here is a dance with a very painful death. My suit is a heavy, heated fortress. Without that insulation, I would be a frozen statue in seconds. If my heater fails, I have minutes to live. You and I both know there is no room for error. Back near Earth, a small puncture in my suit is a nightmare, sure, but I can manage it. Pressure drops, but there is usually time to reach the airlock. Out here on Titan, a suit breach is a death sentence. The atmosphere is toxic, and the freezing cold would kill me in seconds. There is almost zero time to react. Let us think about what happens if we face a crisis during our mission to Saturn. Every disaster that can happen on Earth can happen right here in the void. Back home, a medical emergency brings help in hours via ambulances or helicopters. Help is always just a phone call away. If my ship malfunctions in Earth orbit, I can abort to the surface or wait for a rescue team. The infrastructure there is built to save us. They have launch pads, rockets, and standby crews. If a system fails, we just hop in a Crew Dragon or Soyuz and head back home immediately. You undock, fire the engines, and land. It is a proven, safe routine. But out here at Saturn, no rescue is coming for us. If one of my crewmates gets sick or injured beyond our training, they die. If a vital system breaks and I cannot fix it, we all die. There is no 911 to call, no evacuation, and no backup plan for rescue. Even our radio signals take over 1 hour just to reach Earth. Even with the fastest engines I can imagine, Earth stays years away. Spacecraft cannot even approach the speed of light yet. If I sent a distress call today and NASA launched a rescue immediately with their fastest ship, it would still take years to reach my position. 3 years if they use advanced propulsion and risky flight paths. More realistically, it would take 5 to 7 years to find us. By the time help arrives, my crew would be long dead from starvation, oxygen failure, or 100 other ways the void claims a life. When our critical systems fail, we are completely and absolutely alone. This isolation shifts our entire understanding of risk and survival. I have to make every choice knowing there is no safety net. No one is coming. I either save myself and my crew, or we perish. Our medical screening has to be incredibly intense. I cannot afford for a teammate to develop a major health crisis while we are in deep space. Doctors checked my genes for cancer, heart disease, and anything that might pop up during a mission lasting several years. There is no room for error. We need younger crew to avoid the health risks that come with age, but we also desperately need the wisdom of experienced veterans. I need people beside me who have survived the crushing stress of spaceflight. Our equipment redundancy has to be absolutely extreme. Every vital system in our ship needs multiple backups. If my primary oxygen generator dies, I need a secondary system to kick in immediately. We even have third-tier backups, like chemical oxygen candles to keep us breathing for weeks while I scramble to fix the main life support. Our ship is heavier and more complex because of these redundancies, but the alternative is letting a single failure kill every one of us. That is simply not an option. My crew and I spent years training for every repair, every system, and every possible nightmare scenario. We cannot wait for specialists on Earth to walk us through repairs with those massive radio delays. I have to diagnose every fault myself. I have to master every schematic and learn to improvise repairs with whatever scrap we have. We must all be experts in life support. That means power, engines, comms, and computers. It is a level of mastery far beyond anything required for low Earth orbit missions today. On the International Space Station, astronauts can specialize in robotics or science. They have a luxury we do not have out here in the dark. They have mission control watching their every move, but we cannot rely on that. Out here at Saturn, everyone must know everything to survive. The level of independence and skill we need is beyond any challenge ever attempted in the history of human space exploration. Even the Apollo crews, who went further than anyone else, were just seconds away by radio and a few days from home. They had an entire room of engineers monitoring their every breath and giving them solutions in real time. When Apollo 13 was crippled by an explosion, the crew spent hours working with Earth to find a way back alive. Ground crews ran the simulations and math for them. Those astronauts just had to execute the plan that Mission Control built. Teamwork saved them. My crew will get guidance from Earth, but it will be painfully delayed and very limited in its usefulness. I will get suggestions, but I must make life or death choices in the moment without waiting for a reply from home. I have to trust my own gut, my training, and my ability to improvise. If I make the wrong call, we die. Knowing my life depends entirely on my own hands, and my small crew is enough to crush anyone psychologically. It is heavy. Now, let us look at the return journey together, assuming we make it that far. Suppose we have done everything perfectly. I reached Saturn safely despite the radiation. We explored the moons, and maybe even found signs of life in a hidden ocean. We scavenged enough fuel from the moons or saved it through careful planning. Finally, my crew is ready to head home. I fire up the main engines, break free from the moon gravity, and start the long trek back to the sun. We escape Saturn's massive gravity and aim for home. But the road back is just as long and deadly as the trip out. Another 7 years of drifting through the void. That is 7 more years of cosmic radiation poisoning our bodies on top of everything else. I face 7 more years of wasting away in microgravity, or whatever partial gravity our spinning ship can provide. But even fake gravity cannot stop my bones from thinning and my muscles from withering. 7 more years of total isolation await. Another 7 years of breathing canned air and drinking my own recycled waste. Only this time, the stakes are even higher. My ship and gear have been out here for years. Constant radiation is eating away at the guts of our electronics. We drift through cycles of freezing shadow and searing sunlight. Every time a system kicks on, the metal groans under the strain. Everything expands and contracts. This mechanical stress is a silent killer, slowly fatiguing the very frame that keeps us alive. Then there are the micrometeorites, tiny invisible bullets of dust and rock screaming through the void at impossible speeds. They are smaller than a grain of sand, but at tens of thousands of miles per hour, they hit like a hammer. Years of these impacts leave their mark. They pit our hull and punch microscopic holes through anything not shielded by lead. I am asking this aging, battered ship to survive another 7 years in this graveyard. It is a terrifying gamble. What was fresh at launch is now ancient. Rubber seals are becoming brittle, and I can almost hear the pressure leaking away. Radiation is scrambling our brains, not ours, but the computer's. Bit flips and sensor glitches are becoming our new normal. Joints are grinding. Bearings are wearing thin. I can feel the fatigue in the bones of the station itself. Our life support filters are choking. The materials we use to scrub the air are nearly at their limit. I have used most of the spares. Now, every small failure feels like it could be the one that ends us. There is no resupply from Earth. No one is coming to save us. We cannot just manufacture complex parts out here. Not unless we have high-tech 3D printers and the raw materials to feed them. Even then, it is risky. If a critical part snaps, and we cannot fix it with what we have left, we are just ghosts in waiting. And the crew, we are tired. Years orbiting Saturn have drained us. The stress of the surface missions has taken its toll. Between the radiation and the weightlessness, we are not the same people who left Earth all those years ago. We are broken. We will be 14 years older if we ever make it back. That is a massive chunk of a human life. Friends who left in their 30s will return as middle-aged strangers. Those in their 50s are nearing retirement. Life moved on without us. Our children are now adults, living lives we only caught in grainy, delayed video transmissions. Siblings are graying, parents are gone. The world we are dreaming of returning to simply does not exist anymore. We are exhausted, body and soul. The mental weight of staying vigilant every second for years is starting to crush us. It wears you down. I can see the chronic health issues starting to creep in among the rest of the crew. Radiation sickness is surfacing. Our bones are becoming as fragile as glass after years in low gravity. It is a nightmare. Moving is a chore. Our muscles have wasted away. This return journey is going to be far harder than leaving. It is not just the ship falling apart, it is us. We are simply less capable of fighting for our lives. We are just so tired. We want to go home, but knowing there are years left in this tin can is devastating. And what about Earth? We left 2 years before we even reached Saturn. That feels like a whole different lifetime ago. We spent years at that ringed giant, working and waiting. Now, the long road back has already taken several more. We have been gone for 16 years. In human terms, that is an eternity. We have missed everything. Our careers are over. The political world we knew has been torn down and rebuilt without us. New leaders have taken over. The agencies that sent us into the dark might not even have the same goals. The politicians who promised us the stars are gone. Their replacements have new bills to pay and new priorities. Back then, we were heroes. Every news channel was talking about us. Now, I bet we are just trivia. Everyone watched us leave. They celebrated when we reached Saturn. But 14 years is a long time to keep caring. People have short memories. Their attention has moved on to the next big thing, and we are forgotten. Unless we send back some world-shattering discovery every week, we are just a line item on a budget. Even the spectacular becomes boring after a while. The public has seen enough rings and moons to last forever. Titan was a thrill once. Now, it is just another rock. By the time we get home, we will be relics. We are ghosts from a past era. I worry the ground support teams have already been downsized or cut completely. Antennas get repurposed. Mission control centers get shut down to save a few dollars. We are floating here, all alone. Keeping the lights on for 14 years is expensive, and budgets are always the first thing to break. The pressure to cut us off and fund something new is constant. We are an old expense. If they pull the plug while we are mid-flight, we are dead. We still need them for navigation and troubleshooting. We are hanging by a thread, millions of miles from anyone who remembers our names. I am still hoping that when we finally hit Earth, There will be recovery teams waiting to pull us out. Medical crews should be ready for a team that has lived in space for 14 years, providing the rehab we will need to walk again. But what if the public support is gone? What if the budgets were cut or everyone just moved on to something else? The systems we need to land might be broken or totally gone. It is a nightmare scenario, and honestly, it is not unrealistic. Long-term promises in space are fragile. They rely on funding, which relies on politics, which relies on people back home staying interested. All of that can vanish faster than we can fly to Saturn and back. We have seen this happen with plenty of other programs. Look at Skylab, the first American station launched in 1973. It was home to 3 different crews through 1974. Then NASA just walked away from it because they shifted all their focus to the Space Shuttle program instead. Skylab just drifted there, empty and alone, until it burned up in the atmosphere back in 1979. The Soviets had their Salyut stations too, but they only operated them when the politics and the budgets lined up right. Even the International Space Station, the most expensive thing humans ever built at over $150 billion, isn't guaranteed funding. People are constantly arguing about whether to keep it running or scrap it, wondering if that money belongs somewhere else. A mission like ours to Saturn would be way more expensive than the International Space Station ever was. We are talking hundreds of billions, maybe even $1 trillion, depending on shifting national priorities. Keeping that support is incredibly difficult. What if the support for us just collapses halfway through the mission? What if they decide we are too expensive or the science isn't worth the cost? We are still out here, committed and totally dependent, but the will to bring us home might not be there. It is a risk we cannot really measure, but it is real. Then there is the actual challenge of getting home. Coming back from Saturn is nothing like a trip from the Moon or Mars. The speeds are much higher. Coming from Saturn, we are falling toward the Sun, and its gravity is whipping us faster and faster. By the time we hit Earth orbit, we are screaming through space, way faster than any craft returning from the Moon. The Apollo missions came home at about 25,000 miles per hour. That was their top speed relative to Earth. That is fast. And they needed a perfect heat shield to keep the crew from burning up during the re-entry. But a spacecraft like ours, returning from Saturn, will be hitting the atmosphere at much higher velocities. We could easily be doing 30 to 40,000 miles per hour, maybe more, depending on our final path back to Earth. Dumping all that speed takes massive amounts of fuel for braking, or we have to fire our engines to slow down, or we try an incredibly precise error capture, dipping into the atmosphere at just the right angle. It is efficient, but extremely risky. Our margin for error is non-existent. If we are too shallow, we will skip off the atmosphere like a stone on a lake. We won't slow down enough, and we will just bounce right back into the deep black. If we do not have the fuel to stay, we could end up in a massive orbit or even get flung back out. Either way, we are not landing, and there is likely no way for anyone to come and save us. If our angle is too steep, we hit the atmosphere too fast. The massive G-forces would kill us or just tear us apart. The friction heat would be absolute madness. We could burn up before we ever slowed down enough to land safely. For Apollo, the entry window was only half a degree wide, half a degree too steep and they would have burned up, half a degree shallow and they would skip off. For us, after 14 years in space, that window might be even smaller. Our navigation systems have been running for 14 years now, picking up errors and getting fried by cosmic radiation damage. The guidance computers might be glitchy. Our sensors just are not as accurate as they were the day we launched. We are exhausted and falling apart. Years of radiation might have messed with our heads more than we would like to admit. Talking to Earth takes hours for a reply, so there is no real-time help from the team on the ground. We have to nail this error capture using only our presets and internal computers. Everything has to be absolutely perfect. One tiny slip, one bad sensor reading, or a math error, and we die right on Earth doorstep after all this. The cruel irony of dying right at home after surviving Saturn is devastating. But even if we nail it, we are not done. We still have to deorbit and land, likely in a capsule just like an Apollo, Orion or Soyuz. That takes another set of maneuvers. We need to lower our orbit until we hit the atmosphere exactly over our landing site. We have to spin the ship around so the heat shield is facing forward to take the fire. We have to time the deorbit burn perfectly, then endure a violent re-entry as we slam into the atmosphere at high speed. The air crushes against my heat shield, burning at thousands of degrees. It melts away, carrying the inferno with it. We feel those crushing Gs of deceleration, pinned into our seats by several times our own body weight. During re-entry, the Apollo crews hit a peak of about 6.8 GZs. They said it was brutal but doable for someone who only spent 2 weeks in orbit. But after years at Saturn, my crew will struggle with just 1 G. Our bones are brittle, our muscles gone, our hearts are weak. Facing 6 Gs of deceleration now, that is a death sentence. My ribs could snap, my vertebrae might shatter as my heart fights to pump blood against that crushing weight. Everything goes black the moment my brain is starved of oxygen. Doctors better be ready. None of us will be walking off that capsule on our own. Even Apollo pilots, up there for just days, needed hands to pull them from the sea. They were shaky and weak, suddenly slammed back into the heavy pull of Earth gravity. My Saturn crew? We would be far worse. Standing up might take us weeks of grueling therapy. We will need immediate, intensive care. Some scars from this 14-year journey will never heal. You can grow your bone density back, but it is never quite the same. Friends on the space station regain most of their strength, but there is always a permanent loss. After 14 years, the damage is severe. Even with training, we face a lifetime of fragile, breaking bones. Early osteoporosis is our future. Skeletal pain and the constant shadow of cancer from all that radiation. We would need constant scans to catch the tumors early. And the mental toll? That never leaves you. Imagine coming home after 14 years. Earth would feel loud, crowded, and terrifyingly vast. The open sky feels wrong after a decade in a tin can. Some of us might never adjust. I would miss that absolute clarity. That bond with a crew where survival was our only mission. We were doing the impossible. Coming back to a normal life feels hollow, almost empty by comparison. I have heard explorers in Antarctica feel it too. That deep connection born from total isolation. You cannot just replace those feelings. You are asking us to give up 14 years of our health. It is a massive sacrifice. Is it worth it? What truth could possibly justify those risks? Robots can do the science for a fraction of the cost. Look at Cassini. It spent 13 years at Saturn. It found tiny moons hidden in the rings and mapped those structures in beautiful, haunting detail. It saw the methane lakes on Titan, revealing a world with its own strange organic weather. It found oceans beneath the ice of Enceladus and probed the giant planet's deep, magnetic heart. For half a Saturnian year, it watched the seasons change, rewriting everything we thought we knew. And it did it all without needing air, food, or a way to get back home. The whole mission cost about $3.26 billion from start to finish. That sounds high, until you look at us. A human mission would cost hundreds of billions. We are talking over $1 trillion, depending on how many rockets we have to launch. Everything depends on whether we use existing tech or build new propulsion and life support for future missions. For that same price, you could send dozens of probes to every corner of our solar system. You could build massive telescopes on the ground, or launch observatories to scan the entire sky. You could fund entire generations of research into the origins of life and the stars. We could learn so much more from a fleet of robots than from one crew at Saturn. The payoff for sending us is questionable. So tell me, why send humans at all? They say we are adaptable, that we can make the split-second calls a machine cannot. We are capable of complex repairs and can chase down the unexpected in ways robots just cannot. Sure, that works on Earth. But out at Saturn, I am locked inside a bulky pressure suit. I am tethered to life support, fighting against a clock that is always running out of air. Most of our human advantages disappear. A well-designed robot with good AI might be more effective. Robots don't have to worry about radiation rot in their cells. They don't need the food or sleep I do. They don't suffer the mental breaking point of isolation. You can build them to survive the deep freeze without heaters. And machine minds are evolving fast. Robots we send to Saturn in 30 years will make me look like a relic. Technology is outpacing my biology. Artificial intelligence and autonomous systems are learning at a terrifying speed right now. Future machines might think and adapt like I do, without needing the massive life support systems that keep me alive. Every time a robot gets smarter, the case for sending a human like me to Saturn gets a lot weaker, unless there is a spark in the human soul that no machine can ever mirror, no matter its processing power. It is hard to justify risking my life out there. Then there is the terrifying question of forward contamination. You and I must be careful. The moons Enceladus and Titan are our highest priorities in the search for life. Enceladus hides a warm ocean beneath the ice. I see the data hydrothermal activity and organic molecules everywhere. Those plumes shooting from the South Pole carry the ingredients of life. Everything we need is already there. If something is breathing out there, Enceladus is a top candidate. Titan, too, with its strange, complex organic chemistry. The energy is there, but it is freezing, too cold for water. Yet, somehow, life might find a way. It could be swimming in liquid methane. Life might exist on those moons, completely alien to anything I know. If we land there, we risk poisoning those worlds. One sneeze from me could wipe out an entire ecosystem. Microbes are hitchhikers we cannot shake. Even our best cleaning cannot kill every single earth bug on my ship. I am shedding bacteria and fungi with every breath. My skin is a storm of microscopic life I cannot stop. My body is a walking ecosystem of trillions of microbes. Hundreds of species are living inside me right now. Some of these bugs are survivors. They crave the harsh conditions that would kill a human like me in seconds. They thrive on radiation and extreme salt. If just one Earth microbe reaches that dark ocean on Enceladus, it is all over. We could ruin an alien world forever. We would destroy the very mystery I traveled billions of miles to solve. We would never know if the life we found was native or just a reflection of ourselves brought from home. This contamination is a scientific nightmare. We have strict international protocols to try and keep our worlds separate. We scrub our robots in sterile, clean rooms. We assemble them with the icy precision of a surgeon. We bake them and blast them with radiation. Every bolt and wire is tested to ensure nothing survives the trip. But some microbes are ghosts. They always linger. For a robotic mission, we can manage that small remaining risk. But with a crew, the risk explodes. I am a walking factory of microbes, producing them every single second. You can build airlocks, but humans are messy. Directly involving us makes an accidental spill almost inevitable. Many say we should stay away. Let the robots do the dirty work before I ever set foot there. We need to hunt for native life first. We need to know what is there before we accidentally kill it. Only after we know for sure should we even dream of sending a human crew into that delicate dark. By then, we might realize we don't need to go. Maybe the robots are the better explorers after all. This realization is pushing our Saturn dreams further back. The day I leave for the rings keeps moving away. The deeper I look, the more I see the holes in our technology. We simply cannot sustain human life for long. I would need perfect recycling for over 14 years. Even the ISS requires regular resupply from home. Our engines are too slow. Chemical rockets work, but the weight I would need in orbit is just staggering. Nuclear or ion drives might save on fuel, but the trip would still take years of drifting in the void. Faster drives are just math on a page. And we have no protection against the radiation that would fry me. Magnetic shields and water walls are just ideas. Nothing has been built to the scale my life would depend on. My body would fail in zero gravity for that long. We have no medicine for what deep space does. We don't have artificial gravity ships yet. We are trying to build them, but the progress is agonizingly slow. It is expensive and difficult work. Most of the technology I need is still decades from being flight-ready. The Artemis program aims for the moon in the 2020s. That is the first step for us. We have to relearn how to survive out here. From there, a mission to Mars is still decades away. If we are lucky, we hit Mars by the 2050s, or maybe not until the next century begins. Saturn is far beyond Mars in difficulty. Everything that makes Mars hard is 10 times worse at the ringed planet. Longer trips, deadly radiation, agonizing communication delays, total isolation, and engines that have to work harder than ever. Honestly, my colleagues and I probably won't see a crewed Saturn mission for 50 to 100 years at least. It could take even longer if we decide robots should do our jobs and stop prioritizing humans in deep space. Or maybe never, if we conclude the risks and costs simply outweigh the rewards. Those alive today who dream of Saturn will almost certainly never see it happen. Even the kids today might miss it. This is a challenge for future generations, which leads us to a deeper mystery. Should we actually send people to Saturn? Is it something we truly must do? There is an argument that for explorers like me, it is just our nature. We have always pushed the limits, scaled peaks because they were there, crossed dark oceans just to see the other side. We have braved deserts, frozen poles, and the deepest ocean trenches. We explore because that burning curiosity is a fundamental part of who we are. By this logic, we should send crews to Saturn for the same reason we went to the moon, simply because it is there. Because eventually, we will have the technology. Because the struggle itself is what gives our work and our lives meaning. Doing the impossible is how we evolve. I believe there is something truly noble in chasing a goal that looks that difficult. Apollo inspired everyone. It forced us to master computing, materials, and engines in ways we never thought possible back then. It showed exactly what humanity can achieve when we commit to greatness. It gave people hope, pride, and the belief that a better future was coming. Saturn could do that on an even larger scale. It would be the most grueling journey my kind has ever attempted. The crew would be heroes. Their names would ring through history, inspiring a whole new wave of scientists and explorers to follow us. The technology we build for the voyage would change life for everyone back home on Earth in ways we cannot imagine. The life support systems we need for deep space could help build a more sustainable world for you on Earth. New engines could change everything from satellites to mining. Even the medicine we use to survive radiation could save lives back home. What we would learn about Saturn, its rings, and those mysterious moons would be worth every drop of sweat. If we find life out there, everything changes. Our entire understanding of the cosmos and our place in it would shift forever. But look, there is a flip side. We have to explore responsibly and weigh the heavy risks against the potential rewards. We have to spend our resources wisely, focusing on missions with the most value for every dollar and every life risked. We should send robots where they work best and save the human crews for when we are truly needed. From that view, sending people like me to Saturn might be possible, but it is not the smartest move right now. We could get more science done with robotic fleets, massive telescopes, and deep research programs instead of one risky flight. Instead of spending $1 trillion on one crew, we could send 20 robotic probes to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. We could reach Neptune, the asteroids, and every comet in between. We could build massive telescopes to peer into the dark. These tools would change how we see exoplanets and galaxies. We could fund the labs searching for the origins of life. We would search for signs of life across many worlds. That total scientific payoff could be far greater than anything a single crewed mission might achieve. Both sides have a point. This tension shows us exactly what we value as a global civilization reaching for the stars. What are we willing to risk? What kind of future do you want to build? There is no one right answer. Different cultures and different eras will all come to their own conclusions about our place out here in the void. What looks impossible today might be mandatory for our grandkids. What looks like a noble challenge to me might look like waste to you. This debate is vital. It forces us to ask why we leave Earth and what we are truly hoping to find out here. Is it for science, for mining, or to ensure our species survives if something goes wrong on the home planet? Are we chasing inspiration and new technology, or just following that raw human urge to see what is over the horizon? All those reasons are real, and they lead to very different ideas about which missions we should launch first. One thing is certain. If humans ever go to Saturn, it will be the most dangerous thing our species has ever done. Harder than Apollo, more dangerous than the poles or the deep sea. It will push our endurance, ingenuity, and courage to the absolute limit. The crew will understand the risks. They will know the mission might fail, and they might never come home, and they will go anyway. Why take that risk? Maybe for the same reason people climbed Everest when it was basically a suicide mission, or why we sailed into unknown oceans, or why my predecessors climbed into rockets that exploded more often than they succeeded. Because people like me are driven to push the boundaries and see what lies beyond that next distant horizon. We seek to test ourselves against the ultimate challenge. For me, it is the dream of being the first to stand on Titan's methane-soaked surface, seeing Saturn's rings edge on and touching Enceladus's geysers. Seeing things no human eye has ever touched is worth any risk to us. I believe in the knowledge we gain. To inspire those who follow and push our tech to the limit, that is what justifies the ultimate sacrifice out here. We are the ones who will head for Saturn, if called, not because it is easy, not by a long shot. Success is not promised. We go because it is the hardest thing we have ever done, a final test of what we can endure. We know coming home is a gamble, Saturn could be my final resting place. That ringed giant is beautiful, but it is deadly. It is a scientific wonderland with views that steal your breath, but from up here, it looks like a beautiful trap. Out here, it is a massive gravity well. It is terrifyingly easy to fall into, but nearly impossible to claw your way out. Physics does not care about us. The distance is soul-crushing, and the risks grow every mile. Just getting there is a nightmare. Surviving is even worse. Working in this hell for years, trying to hit our goals, tests every bit of my mind and body. Coming home? That is the real trick. It requires every bolt to hold for 7 more years after the systems have already started failing. We have to stay sharp despite the radiation, our bones softening, muscles wasting, and the crushing weight of the isolation. I need the world to care for 14+ years, making sure the people on the ground do not just walk away. Nothing can break on the way back. I have to nail a high-precision maneuver while exhausted, after 14 long years in the void. One mistake, one mechanical hiccup, and it is over. The mission ends, and I do not come home. Ever. That is why a trip to Saturn is likely a one-way ticket. We are not planning it that way, but the reality is cold. It is not that failure is certain, though the odds are grim. And the tech we need? Most of it has not even been built. It is the sheer weight of it all, the endless list of what could go wrong that makes my return so uncertain. Even with perfect luck and a flawless plan, things break. Space does not have a heart, and it never forgives a mistake. Saturn is nearly 1 billion miles from safety. The universe could not care less about my courage or how much I want this. Physics is absolute. It does not pause for my dreams or anyone else's. That planet will still be there, beautiful and indifferent. The rings will shimmer and the moons will dance, whether I am there or not. The secrets are there for the taking. We could just watch from the safety of a telescope or send a robot. We can learn the truth without putting my life on the line. We can understand without ever leaving home. Or we can step up, spend decades building the ships and training someone like me to take the leap. Launch the mission. Send us out there to see the real Saturn with our own eyes. Every choice defines what we are. You and I both know the answer is not simple. It is a debate that is going to last for generations. Maybe our grandchildren will still be arguing over whether a human should ever touch Saturn. Or maybe they will be looking past it, wondering if we should push toward Neptune or even the stars beyond. But realizing why Saturn is so lethal and why I might never come home helps us grasp how massive this really is. It is not just about a bigger rocket. This is a fundamental test that pushes my limits and our technology to the breaking point. Whether I go or stay, Saturn will remain out there, a massive, silent testament to the scale of our solar system. It is a haunting reminder. There are corners of our backyard where we can go, but from which we might never return. Let us face the reality of deep space together. This is the price we pay for pushing into the dark. That is why Saturn, as gorgeous as it looks through my viewport, stays a distant dream. A challenge that might take centuries. It is a journey that may never be worth the price, yet it haunts my imagination, because Saturn is there and space is vast. Deep down, we will always wonder what it is like to stand there, even if the trip is a gamble with no return. Even if the cost is more than we can afford. That is just who we are. Curious, ambitious, and maybe a little bit crazy. We are always chasing the next horizon. One day, those dreams might lead us to Saturn, but everyone needs to know the truth. The trip is long and terrifying. The destination is a hostile wasteland, and getting back home, there are no guarantees. In the end, remember, physics does not negotiate. Saturn might just keep me in its beautiful gravitational embrace forever.